Welcome to the Win, Make, Give podcast. This is Ben Kinney, joined with Chad Himes and Bob Stewart. This is part 9 of the Persuasion and Influence series. Ladies and gentlemen, we've talked about the power of persuasion and influence, how it's used in marketing, sales, recruiting, coaching, leadership. You probably just got finished listening to an episode about reading body language, understanding it, and lie detecting. Today's a little bit different. Today's a little bit weird, and I promise you, you're going to be a little bit creeped out. I'm going to read an excerpt from a book, and before I tell you the title of it, I'm going to read for a second. The greatest scam in history. They're found throughout history, they're found throughout the world, and they defy explanation. They are psychic readings, and everybody has either had one or knows someone who has. People find these readings astonishing, and with good reason, since they're often intriguing and credible. Let me describe what happens. You go see a psychic, someone whom you are a complete stranger. The psychic, usually female, describes your personality with pinpoint accuracy. She identifies events in your past and present. After reading, she may include the names of people you know and specific facts about your personal life, career, and plans for the future. She refers to your innermost thoughts and problems and provides wisdom and guidance which seems to make sense. She may also offer glimpses into the future which have an uncanny way of coming true. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a psychic reading, and it is the essence of today's psychic industry. Countless thousands have been moved, impressed, and thrilled by such readings, and they offer testimonials like this. I found my reading absolutely fantastic. I really enjoyed it. Everything he said was absolutely spot on. ... Ladies and gentlemen, the subject today is cold reading. The book I was referring to, I found a long time ago on a shelf somewhere, and it's called The Full Facts Book of Cold Reading. So, before we get started, let me just explain who uses cold reading and what cold reading is. Cold reading is used by psychics, tarot card people, fortune tellers, the people that say they can talk to the dead, the ones that have passed. It's been used by politicians and kings, salespeople, and motivational speakers that you could probably name today. There's 2 types of reading. 1, cold reading. 2, hot reading. We're going to spend our time today talking about cold reading, not hot reading, but I'm going to tell you guys the difference between the 2 right now. Cold reading is a skill learned and used to build rapport with people for the purpose of getting them to believe that you may know more about them than you ever possibly could. See, we learned about likability in the Influence and Persuasion series. And when somebody you meet, you feel like you can relate to, or they feel like they understand you, or they can compliment you, you like them. And because you like them, you tend to trust them. Cold reading uses high probability guesses to make statements about individuals that, based on that definition right there, have a high probability of being true. Now, we'll talk about a lot of those examples today, and we're going to talk about how to use it in a good way and not an evil way. Hot reading is when you make statements about a person where you've done a lot of research about them prior to meeting with them. Like you're interviewing somebody and you research their social pages and you see that they like to scuba dive, so you bring up scuba diving just out of a coincidence. Speakers will often survey individuals before they come to events and then randomly call on that person and provide information that the person provided in the survey, like, what are the biggest thing that you're struggling with today, Bob? And Bob says, well, I'm just kind of depressed. And since that person filled out the survey, the person may have put in the survey, I'm depressed, or I'm even suicidal. And the speaker will go back and say, Bob, you say depressed, but what I can tell about you right now is that you're suicidal. And the person believes, like, how could this individual know that, not understanding that this person had already seen that survey? Well, an alternative to that would be cold reading, where somebody would understand the statistics that if somebody said they were depressed, what percentage of the population would say that they were suicidal. So if we knew that depressed people 80% of the time are depressed, a cold reading statement would sound like that. It would sound, I can tell right now that this idea of suicide has crossed your mind. And you're like, wow, how could that person know that? And this is a very morbid conversation. But the alternative to that would be when you ask the question, Bob, has suicide ever crossed your mind? That is not as powerful as a statement as simply saying, Bob, I can tell that at some point, this idea of you not being here, you taking your life, has crossed your mind. You could see how these types of statements could have been used in sales, fortune tellers, late night 1-900 numbers, scam artists.
So Ben, what you're saying,
leaders.
Hot reading is I'm doing my research. Cold reading is what we're going to talk about on today's episode, which are going to be those general statements that have a high probability of being true.
Cold reading, you don't have information, you're making a guess.
Yep.
Hot reading, you've done the research and you're deceptively trying to present information to the person that you know that they believe that you would have no knowledge of knowing.
By the way, we've been doing the research on these. These are ridiculously powerful. Like cold reading, when you really get into it and you understand. I went around the office when I got here today. There's not many people here and we're masked up, but I did it on Ross and David and a couple of people. And I mean,
and they all thought you were brilliant. And then when you came in here, we just told you to quiet down because we knew what you're up to.
We'll maybe get into the scar on the left knee. David was like, no, I don't have a scar. And I'm like, are you sure? And I made him pull his pant leg up and he's got a scar on his left knee. Like, it's fascinating stuff.
So you're telling us that psychics aren't real? Because I always walked by and saw the sign that said available for psychic, call for appointment. And I always wondered, why would I need to make an appointment to go see a psychic? They should know I'm coming.
Well, Chad, that's because sometimes you're really intuitive, but there's other times when you're pretty gullible.
Now, I'm not saying that psychics or tarot cards or what's the little thing you read in the newspaper? Your horoscope, right? Or salespeople or something are not sincere or not real. I'm just going to tell you guys that there is a way for them not to be, and people that aren't real use the tactics called cold reading.
Okay.
So let's talk about why would somebody do this? Well, here's an example. In sales, it's because you want to relate to them and you want them to feel like you understand what they're going through, right?
Yep.
And instead of asking a question like, hey, has this been an issue for you in the past? Which is what an average salesperson would do. A good salesperson would say, Chad, I can tell right now that you've been struggling for a while with getting sleep. And you came in here today thinking that if you got a new mattress, you would sleep better, which would give you more energy. You'd feel better. Maybe you have a little bit of time with the bride. It would change your world. That is what a cold reading statement would be. Have you been having problems sleeping? No, I go into buy a new mattress because why? I peed on it? No, it's because there's something wrong with the mattress, right?
Yes.
It's not accomplishing your goal or somebody stole it. Right. I'm just going to say that 80% of the time, right?
Because you want to sleep better.
Yeah.
Right.
So cold reading is your ability to make highly probable guesses about a person, a situation, or an audience. When I first ran across cold reading, it was on the YouTubes.
Ooh.
Well, I read about it, and then I went on a YouTube journey, right? And I was watching the YouTubes, and I watched this example. You can find it there today. I watched it again recently, where this guy, he shuts the stage, and he says, I've invited a bunch of people to this event tonight. I've used a fake name, basically. And the premise of tonight's event is that I've told them that I can communicate with people that have passed away.
So seance style.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they come into the room for this event. It's videotaped. And this guy comes up front to the stage. And the mood is perfect. The lights are low, you can see the audience, but there's candles in there. It's like a very peaceful thing. Now, what's interesting is anybody that would show up to that believes what?
That he can do it.
That he can talk to somebody that's passed away.
Yeah.
Yep.
What's another thing you know about the people in the room?
They've lost somebody.
That somebody's passed away that they want to
Somebody.
talk to, right? So the guy, this is where all these things that we've talked about starts coming together. The guy says, okay, let's get started. And he says, I'm getting something. I have a connection. This person is connected to somebody in the room. It's a woman. It's an older woman. And he's looking around the room, and people's nonverbal cues, they're sitting up straight, they're looking, they're leaning forward.
Is it my grandma?
You could see that they're, and he's cueing in.
So he listened to our last episode on body language.
Exactly, right?
Got it.
He's watching this audience. Then he says, it's an older woman, but she doesn't have gray hair. And you could see this one lady kind of lift her posture, like looking forward, and he points, and he says, your mom or grandma? And she says, yeah, my mom. And he said, and she's passed. Obviously,
Brilliant.
right? Obviously. And then she says, yeah. And he said, okay, I don't know why I'm getting this, but I see a lot of hats. Hats. She wear hats to church or about, and she did actually, right? And that's interesting. And he starts going through these things. Well, he's made a couple of true statements so far. It's a woman. It's her mom, which, by the way, when most people go to something like that, they're looking to talk to mom, grandma, or a child, right? Maybe a sister. And she's older. Well, if it's your mom, what do you know about the mom? Moms are usually older than the children.
Yes, that's a good
Right?
guess.
Yeah. So he's made a couple of statements, and he got another good one. She wore hats. I think a lot of women have probably worn a hat before.
Yes.
Yeah. So far he's winning, right? And he's going through this, and he said, I'm getting a name, Marie or Mary, and she says, no, could it be like her mom or an aunt or a sister or a neighbor, a friend? And he's giving her all these examples for her to go prove, right? And she said, no, I can't think of anybody. And he does this tactic, and it's called the shotgunning. And a shotgun, if you know about shooting a shotgun doesn't have one bullet. It has a whole bunch of pellets in there. And some of those pellets will hit the duck or the goose or the dove or whatever you hunt with it, the neighbor, right? Some of them don't. So shotgunning is some things hit and some things miss. You don't pay attention to the misses, you pay attention to the hits. And she says, no, I don't think so. And he says, I really think it's true. So why don't you think on for a bit and maybe it'll come to you. He doesn't acknowledge that it was a miss. He moves on. And then he goes a little bit.
And he put the blame on her too.
Yeah. He's, I could be wrong, but I don't think so.
Right.
I'm pretty sure, but just think about it for a bit. And he keeps going. And over time, she's like, I remember her neighbor was named Maria, right? He's like, and they had some sort of a relationship. And she's like, yeah, she's shaking her head, some sort of special relationship. She's like, yeah. And so she really feels like he's talking to the mom. And he ends with a statement. He said, she wants to tell you something. And this woman is bawling. Now he's made about 37 untrue statements, and he's made about 4 correct ones. She's bawling, and you could see her saying, it's really her, it's really her. And at the end, he says, she wants you to know that's okay. She wants you to know that she left a little early, but she's still here watching, and she's keeping an eye on you. And he goes through this whole thing. Now, his purpose was not to embarrass these people. His purpose was not to deceive them. His purpose was to show how cold reading can be used against people to manipulate us or convince us things that may or may not be true. And he used the vast majority of tactics. And I was fascinated by this. And I started doing a bunch of research, like who uses cold reading? And it was all those people that we already mentioned.
Yep.
Salespeople, politicians, right? Magic people, like all that kind of stuff. They do it sometimes for good and sometimes for evil. I want to talk about particularly how do we do it for good? And good, there could be a few ways or a few purposes. One, you're trying to sell something to somebody that needs it. You're trying to help them.
Yes.
You're trying to make somebody feel better about themselves so that they can move forward and take action in their lives. You're coaching or mentoring somebody.
Maybe you're trying to connect with someone, like even, again, as I mentioned in our last episode, your teenager, and you're pulling a cold reading even though you know them, but you're pulling a cold reading about a situation they were in or something, so now they're more willing to talk to mom or dad about it.
Yeah, you need to build rapport really quickly because you're making a cold call and you have to make that connection in 60 seconds, right? You're at a presentation trying to sell something, you need to do it. It's also used by the FBI and by the CIA. Here'd be an example. The ineffective way to interrogate somebody would be to say something like, do you have a diary?
No.
The effective way to say would be, where's your diary located? See the difference in the statement? They're already making the statement that they know the diary already exists, right? Well, in order to be really good at this, you have to understand your customer base and know what the vast majority of their struggles are and the vast majority of their dreams, ambitions, or goals.
Because this is going to allow those generalized statements you were mentioning earlier.
Yeah.
Okay.
For people that are trying to sell somebody something, think about industries out there where they were sold something and then they never heard from the company again. Right? We know the vast majority of people, if we said, hey, I can tell right now that you're frustrated because the last time you hired somebody, they took your money and you never really heard anything again. Or in real estate, an example would be, I can tell that you're really frustrated that there wasn't enough people that came in your house. Because if they did, they would have seen the architecture and the design and the quality that I'm seeing today, and you knew that somebody would have bought it. And they're shaking their head acknowledging because they feel like, yeah, if I would have had more people in here today, or more people in my home when I was trying to sell it, somebody would have bought it.
Right.
And then you say, that's exactly what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about how do we get more people in your home. And these types of salespeople will use these different types of cold reading tactics. So I'm going to share a couple examples of these today.
You've already shared one with us right off the bat,
which is
the shotgun.
Shotgun.
Right.
The shotgun is where you use general information. And the goal is to get somebody to either raise their hand in the audience, say, yeah, that's me, that relates to me, or for the person you're talking to acknowledge it. Now, if they don't acknowledge it, you move on.
So you probably have a favorite color. It might be red or blue or green. I'm just throwing lots of colors out there.
That's a question. The problem with that, Chad, is I can tell right now that your favorite color is green. And if you said no, you move on. You don't have to dwell on the fact that it's a miss. You move on to the next question. Right? In the example where the psychic, they actually got 30 no's.
Right.
But by the end, the lady was crying, saying she's really talking to my mom that passed.
One of the things about like this aspect of cold reading, it ties into people's confirmation bias. And so when that person left that room and they went and retold the story to their friend, the only thing they remembered about that story were the things they got right. I was in this room. The psychic knew that my mom was there. He knew her neighbor's name was Mary, and had a message for me that even though she left early, everything was okay. They don't retell the things that didn't confirm what they were going in there to hear in the first place. So that's those misses, only if you dwell on them do they ever remember them. When you just move right past them, all they remember at the end is the compilation of all of the confirmations.
So in real estate, I might have said, Chad, I can tell right now that you're frustrated with the lack of communication that the previous agent gave you. Because I've been on thousands of those presentations in my career, right? That I know that was the number one complaint. the lack of communication, because I'm dealing with people that tried to sell their home in the past that are now looking to hire me. That makes sense? No, Chad could come back and say, no, you don't, to be honest, the agent called me all the time. So I could either say, oh, I'm sorry, my bad. Or I could say, that frustration though I still see. What were you frustrated about? And then he says, well, marketing. That's what I was sensing. I apologize. I can tell right now that you're frustrated because the marketing didn't get people inside your house, right? And he's like, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, well, the next type of cold reading past the shotgunning statements is the Barnum Statement. The Barnum Statement was named after P.T. Barnum, the circus guy, right?
Yep.
Where you make a statement that seems personal, but it could apply to a lot of people. Barnum statements rely on this idea that people want to believe, and they're looking to have information be presented to them in a way that they would want to feel. Here be an example. Like, people want to feel that they're good with people. So I could say, Bob, I can tell right now that you're a people person, that you're good with people. And when you speak to people, people listen. And I could make that statement simply because when I got to meet Bob, I said, Bob, what do you do? And he's like, oh, I'm a manager. Well, what do managers do? They manage people, right? So I can, Bob, I can tell right now that you have an ability to lead and influence and persuade people to do things, right? And that's a skill set that I really respect. Barnum statements, they're used in horoscopes all the time, right? We offer information that seems personal.
Amazingly, it's personal to everybody who has the exact same sign as you. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. Can you guys think of an example?
In my horoscope, it's going to tell me something about how wonderful today is going to be for me, or it's going to give me some statement about you are a warm and loving person, and all of a sudden, of course, I want to believe that.
Well, you are a warm and loving person unless somebody crosses you, right? Which is another one of the tactics. But
well, in horoscopes, it'd be like, I can tell that you're emerging out of some financial strains in your life. Like, who hasn't had financial strains? And most likely we had some recently, right? And looking forward, it's going to be better. Today, look for a financial win or whatever that might be. And then somebody you find a quarter, right? Or somebody gives you $100, or you open your mail and you have a check, right? You're going to look to prove it to be true. Barnum statements require you to understand the probability of people. Let me give you some examples.
Okay.
Bob, your example, the vast majority of people, especially right-handed people, have a scar on their left knee. Do me a favor, if you're listening to the call today, check your left knee.
And not driving right now.
And find a scar, because you probably have it. Because when you fall, right, you end up landing on that left knee, especially if you're right-handed. Well, here's another one. The vast majority of people have a scenario in their childhood related positively or negatively to water. So if I was a psychic and I was having a conversation with somebody, I might say, Chad, I'm getting a feeling that at some point in your childhood, you had some situation around water, a lake, a river, ocean, like a pool. What was that?
Yeah, there was the lake at camp.
So he starts talking about that, and I get to work on that statement and take it further and further.
Sure.
And what happened at that camp.
Well, there was this accident that happened involving a boat and a speedboat and a kid that was one of the campers there.
And then I could follow up with, and that's been affecting you in your life currently, still hasn't it?
Sure.
Because
I knew those people and they were in my life and
whatever that might be, and you keep going down this path. Barnum statements require knowledge to make high probable guesses. Here's another one. An M. A lot of people in our age group have a parent or a grandparent who had an M in their name. So I'm getting an indication of somebody important to you, some sort of a parental figure or some sort of an elder that started with the letter M. Who would that be?
My grandfather, Murray.
Well, what is his name?
Murray.
Get out of here. Are you serious?
Yeah.
And this person,
this was not arranged in advance.
And this person had some sort of an impact on you.
Sure. He was my grandfather. A wonderful impact.
Yeah.
And what did I just do? I just told you it was a wonderful impact instead of saying it was a horrible impact. Now you also know which path to go down that he was a mentoring type figure instead of.
Yeah, it's one of the most powerful aspects of this cold reading is the information Chad's providing as Ben asked these generalized statements, because now he can go down the camp road or he could go down the grandfather road, right?
You know, it's interesting as you were bringing this up, Ben, we just had this conversation around our house because there's this talk that the astrology signs have changed, right? They've identified a new zodiac sign or something along this line. I didn't pay too much attention to it. And we were having this conversation and reading the description of what your new zodiac sign is, depending on when your birthday is. And my wife was reading it, and she said, that's not me. She went back and read the description of her current sign, and she's, oh, that's me, perfectly. Of course, there were probably 3 things in there that weren't her as she was reading it, the way you said it earlier, Bob, where she was like, I'm going to dismiss those things. Because these things say I'm organized. These things say I'm neat. These things say things I want to hear, and they were generalized statements.
So we'll talk about 2 other types of cold reading. Then we're going to send you on your journey to get lost in the YouTubes and the reading of books by like Ian Rowland. The next one is a sugar lump. What is sugar? Sweet, right? So how do you start a conversation making a statement with a sugar lump, something sweet? So you start a compliment. Like, let's say you wanted somebody to change something in your home. You might start off with, I can tell right now, Bob, that you have a lot of style. And because that, you understand that to get the perfect type of buyer, that we need to remove all these family pictures because they want to imagine their family up there, not yours. And you're starting with a compliment. I can tell, Chad, right now that you have a lot of experience with these types of situations, which is why you're going to understand, blah, blah, blah. You start with a compliment. Skill set, appearance, experience, those types of things. Cold reading, if you go and you Google and research sugar lumps, we'll send you down this whole pathway of understanding how do you use sugar lumps as a way to build rapport quickly. Now, lastly, in cold reading, another one, and there's hundreds of tactics, right? Another one is a rainbow ruse.
I like this one.
A rainbow ruse is where you say the positive and the negatives of something, because 90% of the time it's true,
right?
And we tend to relate to both sides of it. Give you an example. Chad, I can tell right now that you're good in front of people and you don't mind people, and in some situations people give you energy. But there's also other times where you need to be by yourself to recharge, and you need that alone time or that time with your honey bunny before you can go back into the people situation. Would you say that's true?
It's amazing. How did you know?
Bob, I can tell that you're a confident individual and that you exude confidence, by the way, sugar lump, right? And however, there are areas of your life which you are insecure. Is that right?
Yeah.
Very few of us are confident in all areas and not insecure in others, right? That is a rainbow ruse. You use the positive and the negative in a statement because they were likely to relate to both of them.
Right.
Make sense?
Yep.
Ladies and gentlemen, whether you are becoming an FBI interrogator, you're working for the CIA, you're selling, you're recruiting, you're going to take a new career as a psychic, a fortune teller, a scam artist, a politician, a motivational speaker, or a salesperson, you need to understand the tactics of cold reading. 1, because they're being used against you every single day. 2, because you can build rapport and help people faster. 3, it's going to reduce the amount of time that you waste and get you further down this path of mastering influence and persuasion.
And we know that you have a lot of skills at your disposal already, but we also know that you want to take those skills and develop them even further.
And that's why we were recommending, if you want to read this book, Ben was pulling a lot of information from that he's found online as well. It's The Full Facts Book of Cold Reading by Ian Rowland. You can find it with a simple search. Folks, we don't want any scams going on here. There's nothing cold about it. Here at the Win, Make, Give team, we are here for you. Remember to subscribe. Remember, leave us a rating and a review, please. And don't forget to share the podcast with someone else. Have them text the word podcast to the phone number 59559. That's 59559. Until the next time, remember, wash those hands and, as always, do good.